All right. Okay. Well, welcome. Here we are on episode number
21,
of season.
22,
Okay.
because it is July 7. Sorry, it's July 18th, 2027.
It is. And who'd have thought we'd have made it this far?
Imagine that. It's been a tumultuous 2 years since we first went
That's,
on the air 6 years ago.
yeah. And some people thought that all these catastrophic events would cause the sun to rise in the west and set in the east, but apparently it's still
Same
doing
place.
as it always has done,
Yep,
and the gravity is still holding us to the earth.
yep.
Uh, you know, and
Yeah.
that
How
great ozone hole is still there.
so how are things in the city state of Vancouver?
Well, the city state here is doing quite well, thank you. I think that there's some perhaps buyer's remorse of jumping onto the fact that we wanted to try and stay with the failed country of Canada. Um, I think the downfall really is coming now that we've got I can't really say prime minister, the head honcho, I guess, Charlie Angus, spouting off anti-American rhetoric. And I think the people here are kind of standing up going, I don't know if this is what we signed up for. And I can't help but notice that the trust territories of Alberta and Saskatchewan are doing quite well. They've got a massive economic boom going on. Their resources are being just uh, established.
Well, all these new pipelines they've built are now humming along,
Yeah,
right?
and quite surprisingly, the great fear that was put out by the former regime of Canada of how it was going to ruin First Nations agreements and the like. Apparently, that's all been resolved, and everybody's getting along like a house afire.
Yeah,
And
and clearly the big discussion there is, whether they should join the union or just stay a territory like their friends in Puerto Rico.
well, that's right. And looking at that as an outsider, I would kind of hope that they decide just to keep their independence, go like Puerto Rico. Why jump into the great melting pot when you can still reap some of the benefits of what's going on and not have to worry about
Yeah, and
all
it's
kinds.
exactly, and clearly no benefit to Trump, who leaves next year and has not going to get any votes out of that territory.
Well, I think
Uh,
we said 2 years ago a lot of the American political people didn't really think that having Canada's 51st state was a really good idea. Not because that it would ruin the balance of power for the Republicans or the Democrats. It's the fact that we have well, we were bred for many years to kind of vote with what the party line was, and now we don't know what the party line is, so it was very difficult to decide how to vote. But if it hadn't been for that watershed moment when Pierre Poilievre lost his safe seat in Alberta for the second time, uh, which basically threw a lot of things into the wind, especially Elections Canada, who lost all credibility.
yeah.
Um, who knows what would have happened?
Well, and of course, now with the Republic of Quebec having to reopen trade negotiations with the
Anybody
can't
that'll listen to them.
well, they got a problem because they kind of need to have a deal that works with the United States and their European Union relationship. So they
Mm-hmm.
kind of have sown their seeds in different directions with a crop failure on both counts. And then their
That's
neighbors in what's left of Canada and the four provinces, there's a lot of bridging that has to be done. And so,
mm-hmm.
Charlie Angus as the far left socialist leader of this Canada that's these five provinces and part of the Nunavut or whatever. And it's kind of strange. And by the way, what's the story with the Yukon? They're not they're in or are they out with
I think
Alaska?
I think that they're looking at it and they've seen that the Kool-Aid that they've been drinking for so many years is actually not very good, and they're seeing what is going on currently in the two independent territories, what used to be the province of Alberta and province of Saskatchewan, doesn't look all that bad. So there could be another vast amount of land. Like, why would you want to stay in that particular thing when your big neighbor to your west is Alaska, and you've got that whole and we talk about Alberta and Saskatchewan, but it's about 80 to 85% of what used to be the province of British Columbia has seceded. I don't know what the right word would be, but yeah, that's kind of why we've got this small anomaly called the city-state of the Lower Mainland.
Well, I mean, it worked for Singapore. I don't know
Yeah.
why you're having trouble with it as much, but it's a different relationship. I know that the people in Ontario are trying to figure out what to do with the empty plants that used to make automobiles. They're looking at maybe supporting some kind of Chinese vehicle repair place because Charlie Angus thinks that's a good place to bring in cars from China, cheap electric cars.
Well, they're running into the problem that the old western part of Canada had is that why would we allow that kind of stuff to come through when it has absolutely no benefit to what's going on in those republics of, well, for lack of a better term, the Republic of Western Canada. Um, and it's also interesting too that pipeline that used to feed the lower part of Ontario, which has now been shut off because
Well,
apparently
it's
it was
too dangerous.
too dangerous.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
The state of Michigan put an end to that.
yeah. So, you feel sorry for what's going on, but the great breadbasket of Canada, what used to be Canada, Ontario, where and Quebec, which has found out that if you don't get $13 billion for nothing, it it kind of puts a damper on how you're going to be able to spend things. And they were the people that drove the country.
Yeah.
Their experiments of multiculturalism,
Well, and now they're talking about
whatever it
making
is.
English an official language in Quebec, which is in order to be able to attract investment from outside. They're discovering that they have to be able to work in a North American environment. Well, that's
Mhm.
curious.
Which is
Uh,
interesting because I think, isn't that English and Spanish?
yeah, well, it's certainly becoming that way, but it is what it is in
So,
2027.
mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
anybody watching this till now is going, oh, what the hell are these two guys talking about?
Well, that's true because let me just tell you, we in Canada have that BC bud, and it's really good. Let me tell you.
Yes. No,
Yeah.
anyway, we decided that we're going to have a little fun this morning with our podcast because there's so many bizarre things going on at the moment inside this country, which are just
Defy logic. They just defy
defies
logic.
logic. Yes, and clearly there's the direction that we're going in is the same as we've been going in last decade,
And
and it's not going to change the outcome, and that's why we thought, well, what happens if we keep it down this path, and that's how we were we were kind of having some fun with the what if scenario. But
Yeah.
I am, maybe in 2 years' time, because everything stays on the internet forever. Maybe in 2 years' time, when you look at this video, you might wonder how far off the beaten path we were. And well, we look at the just the broken hose pipe of ideas that are coming out of Ottawa about,
Well,
or it's
we have
it's
we have this whole thing in Ottawa that we know the system is broken as far as our business was concerned with immigration. They took a
that
very
business model
viable,
is totally screwed up now.
yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And then on top of that, now we have this whole new idea that we would like to bring in parents and grandparents into this country to the total of 10,000, really a drop in the bucket in reality to compare to what, if you believe the people out there who want to say by 2020, 2100 that Canada will have 100 million people. 10,000 is nothing.
No,
But the fact that right now, as we sit here in Canada with our vaunted social medicine programs, which we brag about, and that's what really defines us being Canadian, apparently. There are a great number of people, one, who don't have a family practitioner, and two, if they do happen to have a family practitioner and they live in a remote part of the provinces, at best, might or might not have emergency rooms open because there isn't ER staff to maintain them, to man them. So, what is the idea of bringing in 10,000 people who are going to be inevitably heavily involved in a system that's already overburdened?
overburden. Yes, yeah, yeah. Well, and they're not coming in to contribute anything because they're retired. Okay, they're being sponsored by their children, I assume, who will simply come here and be given CPP and OAS, something they never contributed to,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's a burden in and of itself. Plus, unfortunately, older people require medical care, which will then take, as you say, our overburdened medical system even more over the edge than it is already. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea is really woken in its extreme, and it's pandering to clearly vote getting in the immigrant community, of which, by the way, we have about 4.5 million migrants who shouldn't even be in the country because,
Mm-hmm.
much like the Biden administration in the U.S., the Trudeau gangsters did the same thing, open the
Yeah.
door, and now you have literally millions of people here who have no future in this country because it was never designed to accommodate that many people in such a
Yeah.
short period
Yeah.
of time. And if the purpose was to wreck the immigration program, they were very successful at doing it because you have people who generally speaking supported the immigration policies, which weren't perfect, but they were okay. Now you get a lot of blowback from regular folks, and even the elbows up crowd seems to find themselves a little bit at
Well, and I
the
think
crossroads here.
I
Well,
would hope
this
that
is not
somewhere
what we
along
were in for.
I hope that somewhere along the line, all those people, and I don't want to say the ones that voted for Liberal, but the way they voted, and now we have, well, we're starting to see how rotten the core is here. When we had just had an immigrant, well, not even an immigrant, he was here as a temporary visitor, temporary worker, temporary student, whatever it happened to be, who was arrested for trying to procure sex with a 15-year-old
Yep.
and went to court
Yep.
and had his case
Dismissed.
stayed,
No,
conditional
dismissed.
discharge,
Oh yeah, well, okay, it means nothing.
which
It means
means
he got
nothing. It
off.
means if he keeps his nose clean for a year,
Yeah.
then his record is wiped clean.
Yep.
And the only reason that he got that was because the judge felt that if he had given him a stiff sentence, he would have been deported.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm
And
thinking, well, this is not the kind of immigrant we want here.
no,
And two, what gives the judge the right? Where in it's not like judges have a hypocritical oath like the doctors do, where they have to protect life.
this is,
What gives
look,
the judge the right to do this?
well, this is an activist judge who was given the job by Kathleen Wynne. That's where he comes from, the Kathleen Wynne premier era. Okay, so you know he's deep woke and deep liberal. And that was another loser without a Mezuzah. That was Kathleen Wynne. So, so he's been there a while, but what he's trying to do is he didn't do anything with regard to the merits of the case. He wanted to make a point about the immigration program because that's what his whole argument was based on, that if I convict you, as I should, I think, because you are clearly in need,
Reprehensible person.
you are a scumbag. But I got to put a wrench into the immigration program by doing what I'm doing because this is what he did. Now this has to be appealed to the federal court. There's no way that this can be allowed to stand. This has to be, because it becomes then precedent,
Mhm.
and this must stop. But Canadians are too stupid or too lazy or too smug to get up and say, put pressure on your MP to have this ruling done by this particular judge overturned, and the Crown has to assert itself and say, no, this isn't this. We're not going to
Well,
accept
and
this case.
I don't want to paint all Canadians as being uh, lackadaisical on that. There is some blowback on social media and in some of the letters to the editors, but it's such a small pittance. I keep looking at the media of what's going on in Ireland and England, Spain, Portugal, uh, Denmark, Sweden. Like they are starting to stand up and say, enough is enough. Uh, we can't sustain this. We can't do this. Our values are being changed. We don't like it. And I really don't know what our watershed moment is going to be here. That we as a Canadians, are we going to leave it until it's absolutely too late? And
Well, it may already be too late. Look,
and they are, yeah.
I have a number of people who've social media is really just a town square where people can say whatever they want. But what I said about this, that in a normal country, the judge should be ashamed of himself and be kicked off the bench. But the Liberal government of Canada and its dysfunctional justice system views lewd and lascivious behavior as kind of normal. Canada
Well,
is just real estate and not a real functioning country. Now that's a very harsh thing to
well,
say,
it is.
but he should be ashamed of himself. And again, it's another adage is that weak men create hard times. Well, this decision sends this guy back out onto the streets and making it very clear to any other. Like, how does this judge then say, I'm against trafficking in minors and women? Because this is what this guy is doing.
Mhm.
He's doing activities which are an affront to anybody who has
Any sense of
any
morality,
sense of
decency.
righteousness, decency.
Mhm.
This is a 15-year-old minor,
Yeah.
okay, and that's normal behavior. No, it's not. Okay.
Well, and coupled with this whole thing too, we have our prime minister who, well, we have Canada's prime minister, not our prime minister,
Right.
indicating that his minister of public safety has his full trust, even though he is writing letters of support to get a terrorist into Canada.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
wake up here, folks. There's
Well, the
maybe
other
you see the bright apple, but inside, if you start to cut it up, it's full of worms and it is rotting.
and now he's acknowledged in a press conference just the other day that the border is weak and unprotected. He's going to now strengthen the border because he's going to get thousands more CBSA people out there. Well, I heard this one already. There was we 10,000 out there during the election, and with his fentanyl czar and all this nonsense, which has never amounted to anything. That he's very upset that guns are being smuggled into Canada. Well, there's a reveal. And as for drugs and illegal migrants, well, we don't want to talk about that because the statistics are still being collected. Well, excuse me. Look, the border has been well and truly sealed to prevent dairy products from coming in. We really got that under control.
Yeah.
I can tell you from personal experience, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that don't you bring in a block of cheese from the U.S. because you're going to go to secondary and have your, and you're going to pay them a lot of money because that cheese is contraband, basically. And by the way, most casual travelers in Canadian border towns are aware of this nonsense that's now been cooked up. And
Yeah.
as we know, our colleagues have been told that they have no discretion on dairy products, but suddenly the border needs to be strengthened. Please, but there's just silly things going on, and these start to mount up. And when you make comments like that, like on the internet, then you have these bots show up saying that you're a traitor to Canada, and you're undermining the credibility of the Prime Minister. Craziest
Well,
things you ever saw,
these are the big things that people had any kind of common sense, which I think it died a long time ago. They would see this as being credibility. This is a guy currently leading this country who has 97% of his assets in the United States. His headquarters of his companies moved. He lied about 103 known potential conflicts of interest. How the heck can he govern? Anything that's going to be opened up has the potential of talking to anything about any one of those 103. I don't even know what to call them, but yeah.
Well, there's a couple of folks on independent media who've done some extraordinary hard work to find the links between Carney and these various companies that would bring him into conflict with whatever he would try to do in Canada. Because he'd have to recluse himself from practically every decision he makes with regard to the financial and long-term economic relationship of Canada with anything that would be associated with that was 103 cases
Yeah.
Look, he has no skin in the game. All this stuff is in the States. Something in the order of 2 to 3% of his investments are in Canada. The rest are in the U.S. or elsewhere. So, you have to wonder, why this is going to be problematic for people. Well, look, the other thing that came down this morning was that there's a large increase in Canadians leaving Canada. And a lot of new Canadians, that is who were immigrants maybe 10 years ago, are also leaving Canada. So we have zero immigration right now, as far as that goes, because more people are leaving than are entering the country to be migrants. So I think this business of bringing in old timers from around the world is an effort to try to balance this leakage that we're having. Then some are calling it the brain drain, whatever. But from my perspective, I think the exit of a lot of Canadians, particularly the U.S., is really because the American economy has a large pull factor.
Yeah.
And the Americans, frankly, it's in their economic interest to bring in people from Canada who are skilled and talented. And at the moment, I think it's a trickle, but that could become a torrent. Should the Americans make it easier for Canadian citizens to get green cards? And, within the automotive supply chain discussions, this has already been it's been openly discussed in the media where in the U.S. there's a lot of auto plants that literally are working at reduced production rates because they don't have enough skilled workers
Yeah.
to on the in the auto plants, which are now coming or onshoring, as they say, back to the U.S. Now, can you imagine if the American policy is okay, if you're a Canadian citizen and you have X, Y, Z skills, all you got to do is put in your application, bang, you'll be here in no time flat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we need you in these plants, because we need you on these farms, because we need you at these in these whatever. Okay, they'll empty out this place real
Well,
quick.
actually,
I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it's an exaggeration to empty it out, but you know what I'm saying. The
Well,
brain
yeah.
drain will be more than a drain. It'll be a sewer that's just
Well,
yeah,
it is that these are the people that are looking at economics. They're not looking at heart and soul. They're basically voting with their feet. I have absolutely no confidence in this particular regime that's running this place. I see it going downhill. I worry about what's going to happen to my kids, my grandchildren. And
me
the
too.
best way to fix this is to do this. Uh, Now, is it right? Well, yeah, but for those people, it is. We've talked about this before. If I lived in country X that was a very, very tightly controlled regime uh, with human rights violations and all that kind of stuff, I would be doing exactly what a lot of these people are doing by trying to get out, looking to someplace where my kids, my grandkids would have a better future.
Yep.
And that's really all these people are doing. We have a broken system here where even if tomorrow they decided to build a pipeline, that pipeline would have to go through 15 or 20 environmental studies. And by the time that was done, we would then have to negotiate with the First Nations people because God forbid we couldn't do them both at the same time.
Mm.
And maybe a decade from now, it will get the approval. What company, what organization is going to want to put money onto any project within the boundaries of what is known as Canada right now when it's kind of like going to Las Vegas thinking you're going to win.
Yeah. No.
Obviously, some people will, but the vast majority of people won't. And that's
No.
what's going to happen to these
No.
people with their companies. Why am I going to put good money into a
Well,
lost venture?
Bob, the proof is that there hasn't been any investment in Canada now for almost a decade. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
really, there's no private money coming in. All this money that they're talking about is taxpayer money. And all the money
Mm-hmm.
that's being lost in these battery plants that are closing down or going out of business
Taxpayer.
is all money that was provided to them to these companies either as tax credits or as
Mm-hmm.
straight cash from provincial and federal
Yeah.
treasuries. So that's a complete fiasco. And then, so the pull factor for Canadians with skills and education, whether into the U.S. predominantly, is then compounded by the push factor of crackpots like your Premier Ebby, who says that street disorder and mental health and drug addiction are just perceived threats to society. Like
Yeah.
and
And on top of
to
that,
the safety of people. What do you mean perceived threats? This guy is crazy. Sorry,
well, and he's going to take on the Americans by shutting down our softwood lumber industry.
yeah, okay,
No.
that's fine. So look, there's we have the thing in Canada called the MAID, which is
Yeah,
okay, but this is political MAID. This,
it is. Yeah, it is.
it's suicidal, absolutely suicidal, and it's government sanctioned. Politically government sanctioned. Okay, you've got like I say, your premier is a crackpot at best. Okay, that's the nicest word I can use to describe him.
Well, to get the
And
consensus on
well, and again, the old saying, "Weak men create hard times." This guy, like that judge, is creating the hard times.
yeah.
Bet on it. And the cesspool of criminal activity that is swirling around, particularly the greater Toronto area, which is now a
Well,
daily
yeah.
occurrence in the news. I mean, you think you're living in the crappiest times of
Oh,
New York, the pre-Giuliani times. It's like what we seem to be seeing in the Toronto area. And, it's very organized crime based on ethnicities are very clear. It used to be a joke to talk about the mafia and, and the Italians and all these movies. Let me tell you now, we have three or four silos of serious organized crime,
Yeah.
which no one has any way to deal with, and all these judges that keep letting people off the hook through bail action
Yeah.
is, it's becoming, I think,
Well, yeah. Yeah.
that's the black swan event that's happening. And I think there'll be a real flight of people who are afraid to stay in the GTA to other parts of the province or the country.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna hollow out that place. There's already 12,000 empty condos because no one can sell them because no one wants to live there.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think this is a much more deeply rooted problem that is starting to affect people. See, it's one thing to affect the downtown crowd. Okay. But when this disease spreads out to the suburbs, you know, and the gentry out there who thought it was great to have your elbows up, but all of a sudden, their houses broken into, cars are stolen off their driveways, their kids have to be walked to school because you got predators out there
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
are focusing on them. At some point, it's called fight or flight. And
Yeah.
in the pre-production, you say, why don't Canadians go out and fight? I don't think Canadians have the stomach to fight. They would rather leave the scene. So I see a lot of the urban areas, like in Toronto, for example, people will just leave the suburbs, and it don't matter whether they are black or white or Asian or whatever. These are people who are normal folks who live out there trying to live their life,
Yeah.
but they're afraid for their own personal safety, and they're
Wow.
and they're afraid for their kids' future. So they will move to smaller towns away from Toronto, or they'll move to other parts of Canada, or if they are skilled, educated, and have a Canadian passport, and what we talked about earlier, if the Americans decide, well, here's a whole stream of people we can import that will solve a lot of our problems, they'll be gone.
And
Trust me,
whose
they'll be
values
gone.
kind of mesh with ours.
Yeah, they're not going to go to New York. They're not going to go to LA. They're going to go to Tennessee. They're going to go to Texas. They're going to go to
Yeah.
Florida. They're going to go to Ohio. They're going to go places where there's jobs, safety, and security. And that doesn't mean that they're Trump wannabes. These are people who see opportunity,
Yeah.
safety, and security for the future for themselves, which is not something that they are likely to see in Canada,
Yeah.
and in particular in our urban areas, because they're really, this bunch really is trying to hollow it out. And in the case of the folks in Ottawa, I think they're the architects of this
Oh,
beyond
I
a
think
doubt.
so too. Yeah. Yeah. I think what this is, and I think we probably said it, if not last week, a couple of weeks ago, when it was announced that there was going to be tariffs on Canada to the tune of X number of percent. I said at the time, you watch, the closer we get to the date, there's going to be an awful lot more um, anti-American rhetoric, because they're going to become the boogeyman again, and it's going to. I think that ship has sailed. I don't think people are going to be duped twice. I would hope people wouldn't be duped twice, but we're starting to see a lot more of it, as we've always talked about. Watch over here, folks, because you don't want to see what's happening over here. And now we've got judges that are doing harebrained decisions. We've got people that are leaving, but we're really not letting people know that people are leaving. We're coming up with things where we're going to bring people into the country because that's what Canada does. We're a nation of immigrants. Well, again, that song and dance is wearing pretty thin too. Uh, um, I I still believe in the country. But it's getting very, very hard and very difficult to uh, support
Yeah.
the the direction that's going with people. One who are as much as Carney left these big companies and banks and et cetera to run a country. he's trying to run the country like it's a business, and you can't do that. You can't
Yeah.
just have
Well,
the governor general sign warrants to spend money, one, that we don't have, and two, that haven't been debated before Parliament.
yes,
You can't go to other countries and sign deals when you don't have the authority from Parliament to do that.
yes.
So it's getting more and more difficult to support this kind of stuff. And I
Well,
don't,
I agree with you 100%, Bob. And to me, it becomes even more personal because, some of the commentary that I read about folks like us who are suddenly traitors, or you're not allowed to be outside of the groupthink. You can't be a critical thinker with this crowd because then their only defense or sword is to call you names and to disparage
yeah,
your
yeah,
views on how things are being done. It's shameful, but and then you go, okay, I'm at 50-50 tipping point. How much
hmm,
of this am I prepared to ignore as stupid people who I don't care what they say, or ill-informed, or the bots or what have you. But omission is just as bad as commission when something of this nature is presenting itself, where decisions are being made which are clearly not in the interest, I should say, of the majority of people. And
yeah.
and and the other part is that if you're unwilling to make any changes to the status quo and believe that the path you're on is the only path, then we're doomed because
Well,
we're not your results are the same.
we are certainly reaching a point where they call them watershed moments, event horizons. Pick your analogy, but
Yeah.
they're not that far away.
No.
And in the 2 minutes or so that we've got left, we should probably try and put a positive spin on this by saying we hope you enjoyed the opening part, and we hope that it isn't true. But like people are saying, I don't know what some episodes of The Simpsons on how they predicted things. Are they time travelers? I don't know. Maybe there's a hole in the matrix. Who knows?
Well, Captain, I've been trying to get
The warp engine, she's over.
the warp engines. I know, and the lithium crystals. I can't find them. So, we're dating ourselves. People go, what the heck are
Yeah,
those two
yeah,
talking about?
it is. But
All right. Well,
anyway,
anyway, this really was episode 21, but it's the 18th of July,
2025.
2025.
And yes, we hope you enjoyed it. Hit the like buttons,
Yep.
subscribe.
Yep.
If you happen to want to buy us a coffee, please do so.
Yep.
We're in the process of getting that sorted out. And anyway, have a great weekend. I'm going to be off for a couple. We've got some family coming in over the next couple of weeks.
Us too. So we may or may not be here next week, but it doesn't matter. It's summer and everyone needs to take a break from all this nonsense, which is what we're going to do as well.
That's right. So
All right,
anyway,
Bob, stay
have
safe.
fun.
Have fun.
You too. Yes.
Okay.
Enjoy the families.
Indeed. Talk to you soon.
You bet.